The bag was sitting on a bench at the Greenbelt station just past the fare gates on a Tuesday morning in late October. It was a black nylon duffel, unzipped about 3 inches at the top, and the zipper pull was broken. Marcus saw it from across the platform while he was waiting for the southbound train. He had a mop bucket on wheels beside him, a pair of work gloves folded into his back pocket, and a reusable coffee cup that had been refilled so many times the print on it was almost gone. He was 41 years old. He had been awake since 4:30. He had a first job at 7 and a second job starting at 2, and he was trying to finish a cold egg and cheese sandwich he had packed himself before his shift started. He looked at the bag for a long moment, then he looked around to see if someone had stepped away from it. Nobody claimed it. The platform was filling up. People walked past it. A woman with a stroller angled wide around it. A man in a suit stepped over the strap. Nobody looked at it twice. Marcus set down his coffee cup and walked over. He already knew from the weight of it when he lifted it that something was wrong. He already knew from the way the zipper was straining at the seam that there was more inside than a change of clothes. He unzipped it the rest of the way, right there on the platform, and saw what was inside. He did not count it that morning. He counted it later in a supply closet at his first job, with the door latched sitting on an overturned bucket in the fluorescent light. $140,000 in banded stacks. He sat with that number for a long time. He sat with what it meant, too. He thought about the way the money had been organized, banded in stacks of 10,000 each. The bands printed with a bank logo that had been crossed out and rewritten with a marker. He thought about who carries cash in a bag. He thought about whether it was legal money. He thought about whether it mattered. He decided it mattered. He decided that whatever the money was doing in a duffel bag at a metro station at 7 in the morning, the person who left it behind was not going to forget it was gone. Then he zippered the bag shut, tucked it behind a shelf of cleaning supplies, and went out to mop the third-floor hallway. Marcus Webb had been in Washington, D.C. for 11 years. He had come up from Charlotte with $30 and a backpack when he was 30 years old, after the plant closed and there was nothing left to wait for. He had not had family here. He had not had connections. He had found work doing what he already knew how to do, which was put his head down and move until the job was done. Janitorial contracts, maintenance subcontracts, weekend work at a catering company when the regular work went thin. He had his own small place in Seat Pleasant now, a one-bedroom with a water stain on the bathroom ceiling and a kitchen window that faced the alley, and he paid his rent on time every month. He had been doing that for 9 years. He had a daughter named Priya, who was 16 and lived with her mother in Charlotte. He sent $300 every month for her school supplies and her phone bill and whatever else she needed that her mother's income did not cover. He had not missed a single month in 6 years. He had not told anyone that. It was just the thing he did, the way some people watered a plant or said a prayer before sleeping. He did not have $140,000. He did not have $10,000. He had $412 in his checking account and a little over $800 in a savings account he had started when he was trying to make himself feel like a serious person. He did not consider keeping the money. He considered it the way you consider something that is clearly not yours, which means you notice it and then you do not do it. What he did consider, while he mopped, was how to find who it belonged to. There was a leather card sleeve tucked into the inside zipper pocket of the bag. He found it when he looked more carefully. Inside the sleeve was a business card bent at one corner for a company called Aldrich Group, and below the company name was a printed name, Gerald Aldrich, and below that, a phone number and an address in Northwest Washington. Marcus held the card for a moment. He turned it over. The back was blank. He set it in his shirt pocket and went back to work. He could not call during his shift. He called on his lunch break, sitting in his car in the lot, with the bag on the passenger seat. The phone rang 7 times. He waited. It rang again. He hung up and tried a second number from the website he pulled up on his phone while he ate the second half of his sandwich. That number reached a woman who said the main office was closed for a private event. She asked if she could take a message. Marcus said yes. He said his name was Marcus Webb, and that he had found a bag that he believed might belong to Mr. Aldrich, and that he had the bag, and it was intact, and that he would like to return it. He gave his cell number. He said to please pass the message along as soon as possible. Then he drove to his second job. He did not hear back that day, or the next day, or for 3 days after that. On the 4th day, he called the main office number again and left a second message with the same woman, who said she would make sure Mr. Aldrich received it personally. Marcus thanked her. On the sixth day, he drove to the address on the card. It was a building in DuPont Circle with a glass and limestone lobby, the kind of building where the plants inside were maintained by a service and the elevator doors were polished every morning. He told the man at the front desk that he had a bag to return to Mr. Aldrich. The man at the front desk asked him to wait. Marcus waited for 22 minutes. A younger man came down and told him that Mr. Aldrich was travelling and was not expected back in the office until the following week. Marcus said he understood. He gave the younger man a folded piece of paper with his name and phone number on it and asked him to pass it along. He went back out through the glass doors and got on the metro and went to work. That evening, he looked up Aldrich Group on his phone while he was eating dinner. It was a real estate investment company. The website showed photographs of commercial properties across the mid-Atlantic. The About page had a photograph of a man in a conference room, greying at the temples, looking at something outside the frame. The number on the website matched the number on the card. He called again the next morning. The same woman answered. He left the same message. He was polite and clear and did not say more than he needed to say. He kept the bag locked in his car in the trunk under the mat where he normally kept his jumper cables. He thought about it every time he unlocked the car. He thought about it when he pulled out of parking spaces and felt the weight of it shifting. He thought about it when he transferred money from his checking account to cover his rent and watched the balance drop to $78. He thought about a lot of things that week and the week after that. He thought about Priya, who had asked him in September if he was going to make it down for her school play in December. He had said he would try. He was not sure he could afford the bus ticket at the moment, let alone a hotel, and he was not going to tell her that. He thought about the water stain on his bathroom ceiling, which had gotten larger over the summer and which his landlord had not fixed despite 3 written notices. He thought about the way $140,000 would feel if it were his. He thought about this carefully and honestly, the way a person of faith handles a temptation, by looking at it directly and not flinching, and then setting it down. It was not his. That was the end of the thinking. He called the Aldrich Group one more time on a Friday morning, 3 weeks after he had found the bag. This time he reached a woman who said she was Mr. Aldrich's personal assistant, and her voice had a certain sharpness to it that made him think she had been told something. She asked him to hold. He held for 4 minutes. A man came on the line. His voice was older than Marcus had expected, rougher at the edges, and the first thing he said was not hello. He said, "Is the money all there?" Marcus said yes. There was a pause on the line. Then the man said, "Who are you?" Marcus said his name. He said he had been trying to reach him for 3 weeks. He said he had found the bag at the Greenbelt station and that he had the business card and had been trying to return it. The man on the other end of the line did not speak for a moment. Then he said, in a different kind of voice, that he had been travelling and had not received the messages. He said his assistant had just now shown him 3 pieces of paper with Marcus's name and number on them. He said, "I need to ask you something." Marcus said, "Go ahead. Why didn't you just keep it?" Marcus thought about this for a moment. Not the answer. He knew the answer. He was thinking about how to say it plainly without making it sound like more than it was. He said, "Because it wasn't mine." There was another pause. A long one. "All right," the man said. "I'd like to meet you. Are you available this weekend?" They met on a Saturday at a diner on New Hampshire Avenue, the kind of place with a laminated menu and coffee that came in white ceramic cups. Marcus arrived 10 minutes early and sat in a booth by the window. He ordered coffee and a short stack because he had not eaten since the night before, and he was not going to pretend otherwise. Gerald Aldrich arrived 12 minutes late, and Marcus watched him come in through the door from the window. He was not what Marcus had been expecting. Marcus had built a picture in his mind over the 3 weeks of trying to reach him, and the picture was some version of the kind of man who doesn't return calls, which was a certain kind of man Marcus knew from his work, the kind who had assistants and schedules and a particular silence that was not patience, but permission, the silence of someone who expected the world to wait. The man who came through the door was not that. He was 63 years old, a black man with close-cropped grey hair and a heaviness to him that had nothing to do with his size. He walked with a cane, and he walked slowly, and he slid into the booth across from Marcus and set the cane against the window and looked at Marcus for a moment before he said a word. "I owe you an apology," he said. Marcus said that was not necessary. "It is," Gerald said. "You left 3 messages and nobody called you back. You drove to my building and waited in a lobby for 20 minutes, and the man I sent down didn't even offer you water. That's not how I was raised." Marcus said he understood the man had been travelling. That's not an excuse. It's a fact. Gerald wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. The bag had $143,000 in it. My accountant is still asking questions. He said it the way a man says something when he is used to numbers of that size, without a tremor in his voice. Marcus said yes, he had counted it. And you didn't take any of it. No. Gerald looked at him directly. Not even a little, not even something small. Marcus said, "No, sir." Gerald nodded slowly. He didn't say anything for a moment. He looked out the window at the street and then he looked back. "That bag belonged to my daughter," he said. Marcus had not been expecting that. "Her name is Donna," Gerald said. "She's 35. She has a ceramics business. She was taking that money to pay off the two artists she partners with because their studio lease was up for renewal and they were buying into the building." He paused. "She set the bag down on that bench because she got a phone call from her son's school saying he had fallen on the playground and she needed to come. She was on the phone and she was thinking about her son and she walked out of the station without it. She called me from the parking lot when she realized what she'd done. She went back, but the bag was gone. Marcus said he was sorry. He said that must have been a bad few days." Gerald looked at him and something in his expression shifted, very slightly. She didn't know whether to report it to the police or not, whether a report would make it worse, whether whoever had found it had already spent it. He stopped. "I told her there were people in this world who do the right thing. She said she hoped so." Marcus didn't say anything to that. He took a sip of his coffee. "What do you do?" Gerald asked. Marcus told him. He said he held 2 janitorial contracts, one in a medical office building in Hyattsville and one in a residential building in Adams Morgan, and that he sometimes did weekend catering work when the schedule allowed. Gerald asked how long he had been doing that. Marcus said 11 years in the city and some years before that. Gerald asked him if that was what he wanted to be doing for the rest of his life. Marcus said, "That's what I have right now. I don't really think past that." Gerald looked at him for a long time, not with pity, with something more careful than that. "I want to give you a reward," he said, "and I want you to hear me out before you say anything." Marcus said he was listening. What Marcus had expected was a thank you and maybe a few $100, the kind of gesture a wealthy man makes to close a debt he finds uncomfortable. He had prepared himself to accept graciously and not make the man feel as if it wasn't enough, because it would be enough. The money was returned. The debt was discharged. That was the end of the story. Gerald said he was offering $20,000. Marcus did not say anything immediately. He looked at the table. "That's 10% of what you returned," Gerald said. "Some people call that a finder's fee. I call it what it is, which is what your honesty is worth to me." Marcus said that was a lot of money. "I know it is." Marcus said he needed to think about it. Gerald said that was fine. He said he wasn't going anywhere. There's something a man does when he's spent a long time not asking anyone for anything. He builds a wall around the part of himself that needs things. And he doesn't open the door very often, because opening the door is a habit that can become a danger when the needs are bigger than the resources. Marcus had been maintaining that wall for a long time. He didn't always know from the outside what it looked like. He didn't always know how much of what he carried was discipline and how much of it was just the accumulated weight of having to be careful every single day. He thought about Priya. He thought about the bus ticket to Charlotte in December. He thought about the bathroom ceiling and the savings account with $800 in it and the next 3 months of rent. He said, "Yes, I'll accept." Gerald reached across the table and shook his hand. His grip was firm and brief. "I'm going to need your account information," he said. "And I'm going to need you to do one more thing for me." Marcus said, "What's that?" "My daughter wants to thank you herself. She called me 4 times this week." He paused. "She's been asking about you since the day she found out who had the bag. She looked you up. She found your name in a public record somewhere, and she spent about a week trying to figure out if you were a real person. She said to tell you she's not trying to embarrass you. She just wants to look you in the eye." Marcus said, "All right." Donna Aldrich was not what he expected either. She was 35, with her father's close-cut hair and a way of holding herself that was both contained and direct. She met Marcus at the same diner 2 weeks later on a Saturday with a ceramic coffee mug she had made herself and a card signed by her and her two partners. She set the mug on the table in front of him and said she had been practicing the speech she was going to give and that it had all gone out of her head the moment she sat down. Marcus said that was all right. "I had $17,000 of my own money in that bag," she said. "The rest was from partners. I had to tell them it was gone. I had to tell them I had set down a bag with their money and walked away from it." She paused. "Do you know what that's like? Having to call two people and say that?" Marcus said he could imagine. "They were decent about it," she said. "They said it wasn't my fault, but I knew what they were thinking. I'd have thought the same thing." She was looking at the mug she'd placed on the table. "And then my father called me and said a man named Marcus had left 3 messages saying he had my bag, that he had found it and called the number on the card and was trying to return it." Marcus said he was glad the messages got through eventually. "What I want to know," she said, "is how you resisted it. $140,000 on a train platform, and you just picked it up and went to work." He thought about how to answer that honestly. "The money wasn't doing anything wrong," he said. "It was just sitting there. The person who left it behind was the one who needed it back. That's what I was thinking about." Donna looked at him. "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple," he said, "but it's clear. There's a difference." She didn't say anything to that for a moment. She was quiet in the way that meant she was turning something over. "My father told me what you do," she said. "What your schedule is like, that you have 2 jobs and sometimes a third." Marcus said yes. She said, "I have a building." He waited. "A warehouse in Brooklyn that we converted into studio space. 4,000 square feet. I lease half of it to a woodworker and a textile artist, and we share the utility costs. The building has a maintenance contract with a company that charges me too much and sends people who don't know what they're doing." She paused. "I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you a contract. A real one, with a scope of work and a monthly rate. But if you're interested, I'd want to meet first and show you the space, and you can tell me honestly whether it's a job you'd want." Marcus said he would like to see the space. He went on a Tuesday afternoon in November, with rain coming in sideways off the Anacostia. He had taken the morning job off that day and felt strange about it, the way he always felt strange when he was not working when he was supposed to be working. He arrived 20 minutes early and sat in his car in the lot outside the building, watching the rain run down the corrugated aluminum of the loading bay overhang. There was a ceramic business logo on the door, modest, hand-painted, the kind of thing a person does themselves. He sat and looked at it for a moment. He did not know what he was weighing. He was not good at knowing what he was weighing until after he had already decided. He got out of the car and knocked. The building was a converted brick warehouse with a loading bay and tall industrial windows and a freight elevator that needed a new motor. He walked the space with Donna for 40 minutes. He asked questions about the plumbing, about the HVAC units on the roof, about the parking lot drains. He made notes in a small spiral pad he kept in his breast pocket. She answered what she could and said she would get him the service history for what she couldn't. At the end of the walkthrough, he said the freight elevator was going to need attention before winter, that the flat roof drainage was marginal and would be a problem in a heavy rain, and that the parking lot lighting was below code. She said, "So you know what you're looking at?" He said he did. She said the rate she was offering, and it was a fair rate. More than fair. He did not say anything immediately. He looked at the tall windows with the rain running down them. He looked at the freight elevator with the out-of-service sign taped to the gate. He said, "All right." They shook hands in the loading bay with the rain coming off the roof overhanging sheets, and neither of them felt the need to say anything else about it. The freight elevator took Marcus 3 weeks to sort out, working weekends around his other 2 contracts. He sourced a rebuilt motor from a parts supplier in Maryland and installed it with a licensed electrician he had worked alongside before. He fixed the parking lot, lighting himself. He cleared the roof drains in the first week of December, 2 days before a storm dropped 3 inches of rain on the district, and the building stayed dry. Donna texted him the morning after the storm. It said the roof held. "Thank you." He did not write back immediately. He was on the metro, on the way to his morning job. He put the phone in his pocket and looked out the window at the city going past in the early light. He texted back 1 word. "Good." He made it to Charlotte in December. He had not been back to the city in 2 years. He had told himself it was the cost, and that was partly true. It was also the way Charlotte held certain things for him, certain streets and certain weather, and the particular way the light fell on certain afternoons that made him feel like the person he had been before he left, who was a younger and less certain version of himself. He had left that person in Charlotte because he had needed to. He was not always sure what to do with him when he came back. He got off the bus at the station on North Tryon and stood on the sidewalk for a moment with his one bag and the grocery store flowers he had bought at a shop 2 blocks from the station. He looked at the sky, which was the same sky. He took the measure of it. Then he took a taxi to the hotel. He bought the bus ticket 3 weeks early when the reward money settled in his account, and he booked a room at a budget hotel 4 blocks from Priya's school. He sat in the 3rd row of the auditorium on a Friday evening and watched his daughter play a minor but precisely rendered role in a school production of a play he had never heard of. She found him in the lobby after, in his good jacket, with a small bouquet of grocery store flowers he had carried the whole way from the hotel. She was taller than the last time he had seen her, which had been 18 months ago, and she looked at him for a second before she hugged him. He held on longer than he usually let himself. She said into his shoulder, "You actually came," he said. "I said I would try." She pulled back and looked at him. "That's not the same thing as coming," she said. He said, "I know, I'm sorry." She kept looking at him. She was 16 and had her mother's eyes and something in her expression that was starting to look like a thing she had built herself. "Are you okay?" she said. He said yes. "You seem different." He didn't know what to say to that, so he handed her the flowers. By February, Marcus had a standing schedule. The medical office building Monday through Wednesday mornings, the residential building Thursday and Friday afternoons, the Brooklyn studio on Saturdays. He had let the catering weekend work go. His total monthly income had gone up by 1/3 and his schedule had dropped by 12 hours a week. He did not know how to think about that. He had been operating at a certain level of pressure for so long that the absence of it felt like something he was not yet sure he deserved. He was in the freight elevator at the Brooklyn studio one Saturday afternoon in March, riding up from the loading bay with a cart of supplies, when Donna came down the corridor from her side of the building. "You've been avoiding the South studio," she said. He had not been avoiding it, he had just not had a reason to go in. She said, "I want to show you something." He followed her into the South studio, which was where she worked. It was a wide, high-ceilinged room with a gas kiln along one wall and a wheel in the centre and shelving along the back. On the shelving were pieces she had made, mugs and bowls and plates and taller forms that he did not have the vocabulary for. He had never been inside a working ceramics studio before. There was clay dust settled on the windowsills and a smell of minerals and heat and something else he could not name. The shelves were orderly but full, and the pieces were in different stages of something, some rough and matte, some fired and glossy, some somewhere in between. He understood, in the way he understood things in spaces like this, that the work had a logic to it, and that the logic was not his to know. He was there to keep the building around it running. The work itself was not his territory. She stopped in the middle of the room and turned around. She said, "The mug I gave you, the one at the diner." He said he had it. He drank his morning coffee from it every day. She smiled, just slightly. "Good. Then you know what my work looks like." He said he did. She said, "I'm showing at a gallery in Georgetown in April. My father and his wife are coming. You're welcome to come too. Not as maintenance, just as a person." He stood there for a moment in the middle of her studio with the kiln ticking warmly behind him. He said he would think about it. "You can bring your daughter," she said. "If she's ever up visiting." He said maybe in the summer. Then the summer, she said. She was not pushing him. She was just placing the possibility down the way you place a seed, without expectation, understanding that some things need more time than other things. He said, "All right, if you've ever held something that wasn't yours and made the choice to give it back, you know something about this story. Drop a word in the comments if you do." Marcus went to the gallery in April. He wore his good jacket, the one he had worn to Priya's play. He arrived early and stood in front of a tall ceramic piece near the back wall for a long time, a piece that was the colour of deep water at a certain hour, and he thought about how it had been made. All that pressure, all that heat, how something could be made from plain material and patience and come out looking like that. Donna saw him from across the room and nodded once. He nodded back. Gerald was there too, with his wife, a woman named Cora, who shook Marcus's hand and said she had heard a lot about him. Marcus said that was kind. She said it wasn't kindness, it was just true. Gerald pulled him aside near the end of the evening, near the bar where the sparkling water was, and stood with him for a moment. He did not say anything for a few seconds, which Marcus had started to understand was something Gerald did when he was about to say something he had been waiting to say. "There's a building on Rhode Island Avenue," Gerald said. "Commercial. I've been looking for a property manager, someone to oversee the maintenance contracts, manage the vendors, be the point of contact for the tenants. It would require you to give up your other contracts, probably. It's a real job. Full-time." He paused. "I'm not asking you tonight. I'm telling you to think about it." Marcus said he would think about it. He meant it. He did think about it seriously for 3 weeks. He thought about what it would mean to give up the contracts he had built over 11 years. He thought about the stability of a salaried position. He thought about what it meant that Gerald was offering it. He went back to Gerald on a Tuesday evening by phone. He said, "Before I answer, I want to ask you something." And Gerald said, "Go ahead." Marcus said, "Is this because of the money, because of the bag? Is this something you're doing because you feel like you owe me something you haven't paid yet?" There was a pause. Gerald said, "Partly." Marcus said he appreciated the honesty. "But mostly," Gerald said, "it's because you walked through Donna's building and told her the freight elevator needed a new motor, and the drainage was marginal, and the parking lot lighting was below code, and you fixed all 3 of them, and you've been there every Saturday since November, and the building is running the way it's supposed to run." He paused. "I've had a lot of people tell me they can do the job, and then not do the job. You did the job before anyone offered you the job." Marcus didn't say anything to that. "So some of it is the bag," Gerald said, "but mostly it's the elevator." Marcus said all right. He said yes. He gave notice on his morning contract in May and his residential contract at the end of the month. He had been with one of them for 7 years and with the other for 4, and both supervisors said they were sorry to lose him, and both meant it. He said he appreciated the work. He meant that too. His last Saturday at the Brooklyn studio was the first week of June, the same week Priya called to say she was thinking about visiting in July. He told her yes. He told her he had room. He told her he had taken a different job that came with a slightly larger apartment he was thinking of moving into by fall. She said, "What happened?" He said, "What do you mean?" "Something happened," she said. "You sound different." He said, "Nothing happened." He said, "Things just changed the way things sometimes change." She said, "Dad," he said, "I found something that wasn't mine, and I gave it back. That's the whole story." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That's all?" He said, "That's all." She said she would come in July. He was sitting in his kitchen when he hung up at the small table by the window that faced the alley, with the ceramic mug in his hand and the morning light coming in through the glass. The mug was the colour of deep water. He had been drinking his coffee from it every day since December. He had not thought very much about the day he found the bag, or the weeks after it, or what it had cost him to make 3 unanswered phone calls and drive to a building in DuPont Circle and wait in a lobby for 22 minutes and keep the bag in his trunk and go to work. He thought now about all the people who had walked past that bench on the platform. The woman with the stroller, the man in the suit, the crowd that had moved around the bag as if it were a problem someone else would solve. He had not judged them for it. He understood the instinct of people in a hurry, the way you lower your eyes in a city because there is too much to look at and most of it does not require your attention. He understood that a bag on a bench at a metro station in the morning can be a lot of things, and most of them are not your business. He had not thought very much about it because it did not seem to him like a story. It seemed to him like a Tuesday. He thought about it now, briefly, in the morning light. He thought about the bench at the Greenbelt station, the broken zipper pull, the weight of the bag when he picked it up, the man in the suit who stepped over the strap, the woman with the stroller who angled wide. He thought about the supply closet and the overturned bucket and the fluorescent light and the number $140,000 sitting on his lap. He thought about what it means to carry something that is not yours and not let it change you, and how that is one of the simplest things in the world and also one of the hardest, and how nobody would ever know you had done it unless you told them. He set the mug down on the table. He went to work. If there's someone in your life who has carried something quietly and put it back and never said a word about it, This is their story too. And if you want to see more stories like this one, there's another one waiting for you right here. Stay with it. Priya came in July on a Thursday evening on the bus from Charlotte with a bag that was too big for 1 week and a new habit of looking at everything as if she was deciding whether to keep it or let it go. She was 16, almost 17, and she was her father's daughter in ways she did not yet fully know. She walked out of the bus station and found him standing on the sidewalk in his good jacket, without flowers this time, just standing there in the early evening light with his hands at his sides. She said, "You look like you're waiting for someone important." He said, "I am." She came to him then with the big bag bumping against her hip, and she put one arm around him and they stood there on the sidewalk for a moment. The city went on around them. Buses and bikes and a delivery truck and 2 women talking by a storefront. All of it ordinary and continuous. He carried her bag to the car, he put it in the trunk, he drove her through the city in the early dark, pointing out things as they passed, the river, the park, the bridge with the lights on it, and she looked out the window at everything with that appraising gaze. She said, "You said you found something last fall." He said, "Yes." "What did you find?" He thought about how to say it. He said, "A bag someone left behind." She looked at him. "And you gave it back?" He said, "Yes." She turned back to the window. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Were you ever sorry?" "You did." He thought about this carefully. He thought about the days in between, the unanswered messages and the lobby and the trunk of the car and the bathroom ceiling. He thought about the account balance dropping to $78 and the bus ticket he had not been able to buy in September. He said, "No." She nodded. She seemed satisfied with that, the way young people are sometimes satisfied with a short, true answer and do not need more. They drove the rest of the way without talking. The city lights were on. The river was dark and still to the south. He knew where he was going. He had always known how to get where he was going. That had never been the question. The question was whether you arrived as the same person who set out, whether the weight of what you carried and what you chose not to keep left you intact. He thought that it did. He thought that was enough.